As I shared on Wednesday night, if you tuned in for the online introduction to this study, you know, country music is pretty famous for drinking, cheating, mama, trains, trucks. But you know what else? Country music, number one, not all, but lots of country artists and writers are believers. And there are times that they really like to try to share some truth through this medium of country music. And some of those songs have ended up on our radios, and we're very familiar with them. And some of them we're going to look at over the next few weeks and say, okay, here's something from the Bible that this sort of relates to, or maybe it's even drawn from that. There are going to be others that we're going to say, I'm just giving you fair warning, this has nothing to do with Scripture at all. It's a nice country song that gives an idea, but it's not necessarily a biblical idea. So we're going to try to be honest with you as much as we can. And you know, when I decided to do this series, the very first song that came to my mind was "Jesus Take the Wheel." Like so many country songs, "Jesus Take the Wheel" is a story song. It's a story about a single mom driving home towards Cincinnati on Christmas Eve. And in her words, 50 miles to go, and she was running low on faith and gasoline. It'd been a long, hard year. So as the song continues there in the first verse, she's not paying close enough attention. She hits a patch of black ice, and her vehicle goes into a spin. And the chorus cries out to the Lord. She threw up her hands in the air. "Jesus, take the wheel." She cries out to the Lord, "Save me from this road I'm on." And then the second verse, as is also very common in country songs, the writers take a little twist. In the second verse, she turns and looks into the back seat where the baby is in the car seat, safe and sound, and she realizes that she's just lived through a miracle. But she also realizes that much like her car on that sheet of black ice, her life is in a similar way spinning out of control. And so once again, she comes to the chorus, "Jesus, take the wheel, save me from this road I'm on." Some of us might be living that country song right now. The story of a life out of control, headed for some black ice. There was a guy in Jesus' time whose life was big time out of control. I'd like for us to read his story from the 8th chapter of Luke. Luke chapter 8, beginning verse 27. Actually, I think I'm going to read verse 26 just to set the stage. This is early in Jesus' ministry, and he is out on the ministry trail, and they're on a boat, and this is where right after Jesus has calmed the storm. Verse 26 says they sailed to the country of the Gadarenes, which is opposite Galilee. Now, reading starting verse 27. When he stepped out on the land, there met him a certain man from the city who had demons for a long time. And he wore no clothes, nor did he live in a house, but in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out, fell down before him, and with a loud voice said, "Jesus, take the wheel." I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. Don't know what came over me. Cried out with a loud voice, "What have I to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." Of course, we find out, reading in the other Gospels, that this really is the demon crying out through the man. For Jesus had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man, for it had often seized him, and he was kept under guard, bound with chains and shackles. And he broke the bonds and was driven by the demon into the wilderness. Jesus asked him, saying, "What is your name?" And he said, "Legion," because many demons had entered him. And they begged him that he would not command them to go out into the abyss. Now a herd of many swine was feeding there on the mountain. And they begged him that he would permit them to enter them. And he permitted them. Then the demons went out of the man and entered the swine, and the herd ran violently down the steep place into the lake and drowned. When those who fed them saw what had happened, they fled and told it in the city and in the country. Then they went out to see what had happened and came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had departed sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. The story of a life out of control. Now, let me offer a quick disclaimer here. If your life feels out of control from time to time, perhaps if your life feels out of control this morning, I am not suggesting that you are necessarily possessed of a bunch of demons. For some, it's the bills. For some, it's the kids. Oh, wait a minute. I said not demons. For some, it's the boss. Some of us have a hard time saying no. So we find ourselves overcommitted. And that's what takes our life out of control. Different circumstances seem to work to push our lives out of control. On the other hand, if Satan has a hold of you, I assure you, your life is a life out of control. But look at this guy in Luke chapter 8. He goes around with no clothes on. Lives in a graveyard. They had to keep him in chains and in shackles. He even broke loose from the chains and shackles. In Matthew's gospel, we are told that the guy was so scary that no one dared get near him. In Mark's gospel, we are told that he cut himself with stones. Out of control. Here's a guy who desperately needs Jesus to take the wheel. But as we read this story, what we see is that Jesus, in fact, did take the wheel. Jesus took charge. He sent the demons into a herd of pigs, spoiled the bacon big time. Miraculously, this man was healed and restored. Look back at verse 35. They went out to see what had happened and came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had departed sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind. You would think, wouldn't you, that there would be joy in the city. You would think that everyone would be going, wow, this is awesome. He's wearing clothes. We don't have to put him up for some political office now. Sorry. But look at that last phrase of verse 35. They were afraid. The guy is clothed, he's in his right mind, and the people are afraid. As I read this, I'm thinking, they did not want Jesus to take the wheel. Now, it's not clear to us why. It's not clear, if I can borrow that statement again, it's not clear to us why they didn't want Jesus to intervene here. We're going to look a little more closely at that question Wednesday night. 6:30 is the time that video will premiere. All we find here in the scriptures, in Luke as well as in Matthew and Mark, all we see is that they were afraid. I don't know, a miracle beyond their capacity to comprehend, their ability to explain. Maybe that's why. But this is a matter of a life out of control. And for some of the people, it was simply a situation of, yes, it's a life out of control, but you know what? I can handle it. This is where it sort of comes back to where we are. We find ourselves in a life out of control. And very often, our approach to a life out of control is not Jesus take the wheel, but I can handle it. Or not. But that seems to be what may have been happening in this story. Let me see if I can illustrate this for us. Earlier this week, I stopped in at the car wash. We had taken a trip up to the farm, and you know, you get up in the mountains on those dusty, in Texas we call it caliche. I don't know what they call it up here. The roads that are just, they're like, it's not paved, but they're that white dust. What do y'all call it? Sandstone? Is that what you call it up here? We call it caliche in Texas, which might be Spanish for sandstone for all I know. But you get that on your car, and it's just a mess. And so earlier in the week, I stopped in at the car wash. I paid for the wash, and that annoying electronic voice instructed me, follow the directions as you proceed. You know the voice I'm talking about, right? And so I proceed, and the very first sign said, put your car in neutral, feet off the brakes, take your hands off the wheel. No! That's hard. I want to be in control of where my car is going. And you pull in there, and those guys are, you know, I love the guys that work at the car wash, but they all have that same sort of smirk on their face. You know, trust me, your car's going to be fine, right? But I'm compliant. Car's in neutral. Foot off the brake. Let go of the wheel. And about the time I let go of the wheel, you feel that little thing catch the tire and start pulling it in. And just a few minutes later, you're at the other end and your car is clean, almost always undamaged. And it's done it without you having your hands on the wheel. I'm not making this up. This part of the story is actually true. The whole story is actually true, but even this part. As I'm coming to the end, you know, and then it says wait for the green light. So I'm waiting for the green light. I'm looking in my rearview mirror because there's this pickup truck that's like 14 times bigger than my car that's behind me in the thing. And he's still coming, and I'm sitting, not moving, because I'd reached the end, and so I'm just waiting for the green light. And my thought was, I hope he's got his hands off the wheel. Because what had happened in that little journey through the car wash, my confidence and trust and faith in that car wash had grown beyond what my confidence and faith and trust in the guy driving that truck was. There's a lesson there, I think, for us. When we let go of the wheel and let Jesus take that wheel, when our lives are out of control, we allow him to do that. What we find is he does a pretty good job of being in charge if we'll just let him. All right, so let's live this country song. Because I was at the car wash much like the townspeople in the scripture lesson today. They knew this poor man whose life was completely out of control. They saw the miracle that Jesus performed. They saw the man restored. They saw him in his right mind, and they actually asked Jesus to leave the area. I didn't go on down to that passage, but the next verse, it says that when they came out and they were afraid, they asked Jesus to leave the area. I'm thinking, if Jesus had done a miracle like that and I knew the person and I knew what he was before and I knew what he was after Jesus, I'd be saying, can we just go around and have you talk to all my friends? But they asked Jesus to leave the area, which I find amazing, until I stop and realize or remember that for whatever reason, too many of us do the same thing. Too many of us want to stay in control of our own lives, even when our own lives are out of control. Maybe we too are afraid to let Jesus take the wheel. Maybe we just want to figure things out for ourselves. Or, worse, maybe we just want to live life according to our plan and not his. I mean, what if Jesus had a plan for me that didn't involve something that I actually liked or wanted to do? What if he had a plan for me that actually involved sacrifice on my part of some area of my life? We might want to live our lives according to our own plans, even if doing so gets us in, what is that they call it? A hot mess? Bottom line, too often we don't let Jesus take the wheel. But I want us to consider this morning. I want us to remember that the choice is mine. When my life, I'm saying when my life is out of control, when I hit that sheet of black ice, but really what I ought to be saying is not just when my life is out of control, but all the time. Not just when I'm in the car wash, but when I pull out of the car wash.